Ice time has expired, and speaking of the Carolinas, the chair recognizes Mr. Pittenger of North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Lacker, thank you all for your attention and participation with us today. But President Lacker, I would like to ask you, in your testimony, you spoke about the federal banks and the representation they supply from various interests and diverse regions of the country. I happen to be from Charlotte. We're certainly in your district. Can you walk me through how the Fed is a fully public institution would affect the American public and the economy?
How we affect the American public and the economy? So it's paramount to keep inflation low and stable. I understand that maximum employment is part of our mandate, but keeping inflation low and stable is our best way of achieving that. The recessions of the 1970s and the early 1980s were deliberately engineered by the Fed, essentially, in response to spikes in inflation. We're very concerned about that when we're thinking about, are we at full employment? Is there a chance we've gone beyond it? Is there a chance we're approaching going beyond it? Because the risk of overstimulating the economy is the risk that inflation expectations and inflation get out of control. It may be an unpopular notion these days, but if that were to happen, it would be hard for us to calibrate a response without risking causing a recession. And I'd point out that in recessions, minority groups tend to do very badly.
With that in mind, I guess I would ask you, with the Fed's extraordinary policy stance, it's been in place now for a full decade, what hasn't produced the robust economic growth that we've seen since post-World War II. That's been the norm in the country. Give me an explanation for why you believe that's true. And I'll go down the line. I'd like all of your perspective on that.
So there's a discussion of labor force participation earlier. The fraction of the working age population that's looking for work or employed has fallen. We are no longer benefiting, as we did in the second half of the 20th century, from the increasing engagement in women in the labor force. The rate of growth of productivity has fallen as well. This is the byproduct of a confluence of forces, including capital formation. Neither of those is under the direct control of the Federal Reserve, I'd point out. So while we can achieve price stability with low growth or high growth, we have limited ability to shift to a high growth economy.
President George?
I would simply say that the Fed's accommodative policies, I think, have been important to the progress in the recovery. But I think to see where the economy is at this stage after this many years suggests that there are other economic policies that should be considered and come to bear on further progress that the economy needs.
And could you elaborate on that just specifically?
So, for example, I absolutely agree with Dr. Spriggs. It will be important in the United States that any individual that is willing and wants to work is able to find a job. A healthy labor market will be important, but we must address issues that were raised earlier about businesses that aren't able to find the kind of workers they need, whether that comes from training, education, and other things. We should seriously look at all policies at our disposal to make sure that that workforce can continue to contribute to the economy.
Ms. Jones?
I would just elaborate on what President George said. The single biggest issue I hear from our clients is the inability to attract workers. I think, as Dr. Spriggs said, workforce development is critical. Full employment needs to go beyond what we normally realize full employment to be, and to do that, we need to have more workforce development and training programs to assist with the growth.
I would like to ask you as well, do you agree that the Federal Reserve District presidents bring important regional and local knowledge to the FOMC deliberations?
I absolutely do. As sitting 6 years in St. Louis and speaking for Southern Indiana and Western Kentucky and listening to the voices from agriculture to community leaders to, as I said, the head of Toyota, I can tell you Dr. Bullard and his team took those input very seriously and passed it on. I think it's critical. We represent diversity. I understand the need for more diverse in terms of race and at all, but we represent a diverse economy, and I have clients that sell on the corner of Main and High, and I have Toyota as a client, and those voices are all critical to the process.
President Lacker, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. My time's expired.